Background: I met my husband in college, but we didn't get together until a few years after I graduated. I've known him since I was 19, and we've been married for 8 years. We have 2 children together, male 7 and male 4, and I'm 16 weeks pregnant with our third. I'm very close with his family, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and 2 sister-in-laws, and I always kind of idolized them. My own father was kind of absentee after he divorced my mom when I was very young. Even in the early days of our dating, I talked with my husband about how important it was to me that my future kids' father would be active in their lives. Last night, I got a Facebook message from a woman I'll call Ann. It basically just said, "Please tell husband to message Joe last name. Joe would really like to get in touch." It included a phone number. I showed the message to my husband and he freaked out. He's normally a super level-headed guy, but he just left. I mean, walked out of the house, got in the car, and drove off somewhere. Still in his pajamas. I called him maybe 20 times, and when I called his family and told them what happened, they all seemed weird too. My mother-in-law told me it was probably nothing and to give him some time, which was such an obvious lie I didn't know how to respond. One of his sisters texted me that she would talk to him and that it was time for him to tell me. So obviously, my first thought was an affair, and I start freaking out even more. He came home drunk, who knows from where, and you better believe I was furious. About him leaving, the drunk driving, what I thought was an affair, all of it. I want to say that this is incredibly out of character for him. If you talked to me 24 hours ago, I could tell you I could count on my fingers the number of times I've seen him drunk, and we went to college together. Definitely, he's never done anything even close to this since we've had kids. Anyways, I confronted him, and he broke down sobbing on the couch. He explained to me, when he was 16, he had a one-night stand with a classmate, and she got pregnant. He told her to have an abortion, and when she said no, he said he didn't want to be involved at all. And he didn't. This kid is 19. So for about 20 years, he just pretended it didn't happen. Pretended he didn't have a son. No visitations, no child support, nothing. He did not tell me all these details. His younger sister told me some more details once I called her back. He said things in this conversation that truly shocked me. I always thought he was a feminist. But he said the most horrible things about this girl he was in high school with. That she was trying to trap him. That it was on her to use protection or keep her legs closed. Stuff like that. He said that he didn't doubt that the kid was his, but that he doesn't have an obligation to do anything. That he shouldn't be punished for the rest of his life. I just keep thinking about this young man, my son's brother, growing up without a father. And for the record, we are a personally pro-life household, and by that I mean I would never have an abortion, but I don't think it's the government's job to make it illegal. So I was also pretty shocked to hear that he wanted this girl to abort the baby. I know that's kind of a small thing in all the mess, but our eldest was an oops baby when I got pregnant shortly after we married, and my mind keeps going back to how loving and supportive my husband was. I honestly wish he did cheat, because I feel like we could have worked through that. But now I feel like I don't know him at all. And his family, they all knew and kept it from me. I keep thinking of new bad aspects of this the longer I sit here. Quarantine with kids was hard enough. Being pregnant during a pandemic is hard enough. But what the hell am I supposed to do now? I've been thinking about messaging Ann back to tell her and Joe that he has siblings. I've been thinking about taking the boys and going to my mother's house. I've been thinking about a lot of things, and I just feel so alone. Edit. So I spent today being a zombie, more or less. I did a lot of crying last night, but now I just feel numb. I just let the boys watch TV and movies all day. I didn't have the energy to do our regular quarantine routine. I feel torn between wanting to leave immediately and being terrified of our family imploding. Therapy for everyone is a must. Now I feel prepared, honestly, for any possible point of view the people in my life could have. This is the plan. I'm going to have long talks with everyone, starting with my sober husband, but also my in-laws and my own family. Definitely also Ann. probably also pastor. Depending on how all that goes, I'm possibly going to ask my husband to go stay with his older sister. She lives in our city. I know as soon as I tell my mother, she'll want to come down here and stay with me. So maybe that will happen. I still don't know what I'm going to do in the long term, but I'm feeling better about not knowing. I want to say something directly to all the people who have been in similar situations, especially those of you who were the abandoned kid. Thank you for taking the time to comment and making me feel less alone. I'm sorry that happened to you, and you didn't deserve it. I know I can't force my husband to do the right thing, but I'm an equal parent of our kids, and I'm choosing for them to have a relationship with their half-brother, if Joe and Ann want. I want to know him, and I want my sons to know him. As someone whose own father showed up maybe once a year after I was about 10, I'm taking this very seriously. I feel sorry for OP. I know how it feels to be with a person and then find out they are not the person you thought they were. OP needs to decide if she is comfortable staying with him. He didn't even pay child support. That tells a lot about him. Don't you think so, guys? My husband had a baby when he was a high schooler and proceeded to abandon both his son and the mother. He has expressed some really horrible views once this came out, and his behavior has really been beyond the pale. Since then, I have found out his family threatened to sue the 16-year-old mother if she tried to get child support. And they all got together after my husband proposed and agreed to keep the child's existence a secret from me. My mother-in-law has also made comments about the mother and her family that I think might be racial, which has also deeply disturbed me. At this point, I'm separated from my husband and I want nothing to do with his family. I got in contact with my stepson. Is that the right relationship here? Who is 19. I'm calling him Joe here. He lives with Ann, who is his aunt, and an amazingly resilient person. Ann stepped in to raise him when he was young. His mom, who I'll call Emily, dropped out of high school and was even homeless for a little while. I introduced Ann and Joe over Zoom to my sons, ages 7 and 4. Since Joe is their brother, I told my husband weeks before that I was planning on doing this, because even if he doesn't want anything to do with his son, my children have a right to know their brother. He was furious and against it, but I told him that if he wanted to be in charge of how Joe and Ann were in our lives, he could have done literally anything other than ignore and threaten them over the past 20 years. Well, my husband went ballistic when I told him yesterday that we'd finally done the Zoom call over the weekend. He said that he made it clear this was a red line for him, and by choosing it, I've ended any chance for us to get back together. I asked him if he expected me to do to our children what he did to me, lie, and keep it a secret that Joe even existed. He said that there's no reason for Joe to have a relationship with them. I talked to my pastor this morning, and he essentially told me that I was in the wrong for going against my husband's wishes. He's been telling me for weeks that I need to have forgiveness in my heart for my husband and help him in his own walk with God, and that by holding on to my anger, I'm spiritually damaging us both. I don't really think that's what's going on, though. I also spoke with my mother, who shocked me by saying that I should apologize and not make the mistake of getting divorced. Even my brother, who never liked my husband, says that I crossed a line here and that if I have to choose between my husband and Joe, I should pick my husband. That's just not how I feel. If I have to choose between my husband and the son he abandoned, then I think I'm getting divorced. Was I the idiot for the Zoom call in particular? And am I the idiot for choosing to keep Joe in my and my children's lives? Of course not the idiot. Poor woman, she doesn't have anyone who supports her. Husband is a terrible human being for abandoning his first son and threatening the child's mother, but his whole family was in on it. I personally wouldn't want anything to do with them. How he treated his son and his child's mom tells everything about him. Also, OP is right to think about her stepson and introduce the kids. They all have something they can bond over after all. Their terrible father. I would say the pastor is also not the brightest one. I just lost my mom a couple of days ago from ovarian cancer. I'm devastated right now, and my boyfriend, we've been together for a year and a half, isn't helping me. My mom and I weren't on good terms before her death because of my boyfriend. John and my mom never got along because he's a deep-set atheist, and my mom is very religious. Major issues popped up once I got pregnant and had my daughter. My mom pressed for me to have my baby baptized into the church, which I wanted to. But John was dead set against it. He convinced me that baptizing her and indoctrinating her was a bad choice, and that we should leave it to her to choose when she was old enough. I agreed. My mom didn't take this well at all, and after many angry and hurt arguments, she cut off contact with me. Not having my mom with me during my pregnancy or my baby's birth took a big emotional toll on me, but John insisted it was for the best, and he didn't want my mom near my daughter at all, and that my mom was evil for hurting me. At the time, I was angry, so I agreed. I found out my mom was sick with ovarian cancer a month ago when she called me and wanted to talk. I was horrified, and all the BS kind of just fell away. I tried to make the best of my time with her, brought my daughter to meet her grandma, and tried to build good memories with her. I'm happy to say we reconciled, and my mom and I made our peace with each other before she died. I don't want to trash my boyfriend, but John has been a pain in the ducking butt since I found out my mom was sick. He said she deserves it, but quickly backed down when he saw how angry that made me. He refused to go with me to visit or help care for my mom. He didn't even really want to listen to me talk about how happy I was to reconnect with my mom. All he did was remind me that my mom hurt me and I should have no contact with her, and she didn't deserve for me to speak to her. I told him that my mom isn't perfect, but my mom also raised me by herself and that she was my rock for many years, and he should respect that. He said nothing outside telling me there was no value in talking to her. Now we're planning the funeral. I asked John to go with me, and he refused instantly. He said he hated my mom, that she was a C to our family, and that he wasn't going to church ever, and it was rude and insensitive of me to ask. When I said I was taking my daughter, he had the nerve to actually tell me that I was not, under any circumstances, taking her. This guy is a horrible person, manipulative psychopath. He doesn't actually think that attending one funeral will indoctrinate OP's daughter. This is just a sick power play. He wants to get one over on OP's dead mother. Think about that for a second. OP should go to the funeral and take her daughter and dump this idiot. Because a relationship is about supporting each other, helping each other when it's hard. Even if he didn't like OP's mother, he still needs to go to the funeral. I've been through an emotional roller coaster this past week. I lost my mom after we finally made up. My boyfriend has been stupidly unsupportive, and now he's refusing to let me take my child to her grandmother's funeral and refusing to come to at least support me. My daughter is the one thing that brings me comfort, and I want her with me. Is that so unreasonable? It seems like the more I push, the more he digs his heels in, and I just can't take it anymore. I don't know what to do. His attitude towards the entire thing is breaking my heart on top of my mom's death. I tried being reasonable to John about how he wanted to handle things. I even told him, like one poster here suggested, that he didn't have to go to the service, but could wait in the lobby with my daughter while the service was going on. Then she could spend time with my family after the service. But he again shot it down. He would be able to hear the service, and that was a violation of his beliefs, and asking him to compromise on those beliefs was unconscionable and unfair to our daughter. I told him I had had it. This is the icing on a very large cake. I told John that as of this week, I wanted our bank accounts separated. He made us join accounts to make sure we split everything equally, to be fair, despite me making more. And that I'd be staying with my brother after the funeral while we figured out what to do, whether that was a total breakup or counseling. It was up to him. He said counseling was for the weak-minded, and that we were staying together despite my empty threats, and there was no way in duck he was letting me take his money. He became very loud and in my face during this conversation, so I just let him throw his tantrum until he took my silence as agreement. I took my daughter with me to the viewing with no problems. John and I barely spoke that day, which is fine by me. But it hit the fan the next day when I got up in the morning to get myself ready and get my daughter ready. I discovered that he had the mother-ducking gall to park his car directly behind mine, blocking me into the driveway. I had no way to get to the funeral in my own car. John always drives to work, but for reasons I can only imagine were to get back at me, he decided to take the metro and took the baby carriage and bottles and my pump with him. My brother and I have our differences, granted. In fact, we haven't talked much since my mom and I were estranged. We started talking again after she was sick. But he'll forever be a saint to me for what he did. I called him crying, and he and my sister-in-law arrived within 20 minutes. Sister-in-law calmed me down and helped me get my daughter ready, and they brought along spare bottles, a carrier, and a breast pump. Thanks to them, I was able to go to my mom's funeral in comfort, and my daughter was an angel during the service. They calmed me down and everything went perfectly. And even though I was a mess most of the day, having my daughter with me, and my sister-in-law, and even my brother with me to lean on gave me peace on the inside. I've made up my mind not to tolerate John's insane and controlling behavior anymore. He had a litany of excuses for doing what he did. He even tried to claim his car had problems. And I don't want to hear any of them. I never wanted to be a single mom. I always wanted to raise my baby within a family. But I've decided that going alone is much better than doing it with this man, who thought nothing of trying to kick me while I was down. My brothers arranged for me to talk to a friend of his that specializes in family law this week, and we're taking it from there. I still feel so guilty for what happened with my mom. I miss her so much. I hope from here on out I can make her proud of me, despite my mistakes. Oh my God! Taking the breast pump and baby carrier on a train with him? This man is crazy. I am glad OP decided to leave him finally. At least she reconciled with her mother at the end. Otherwise, she would be feeling guilty till the end of her life.